G'day Bomber fans, we have a blockbuster Friday night game coming up. It is Essendon against Collingwood. We go up against our arch rivals in a winner-takes-all match. Whoever gets the 4 points could end the round in the top 4 and all but cement their spot in the 8 for finals. Both teams are looking to respond after disappointing losses. There is so much riding on this game. It is set up to be an absolute belter, so let's talk about it. But before I do, we should get to the votes from the last game. Alrighty, big share of votes. We couldn't agree on much. Heppel, Durham, Merritt, Mackay, Wright and Dersma all got some love. The only thing we did agree on was Jai Caldwell being the standout. He got 6 votes between us, which is going to be interesting for the overall tally. The overall tally is getting juicy. Jai Caldwell has jumped into second with his awesome game. He is in touching distance of Zach Merritt, and Durham is within touching distance of Caldwell. And after that, there's a big gap. 3 votes separate 4th from 10th. Very even down there. Still quite a few games left. Keep up the votes. Alrighty, Friday night footy. MCG 4th on the ladder up against 6th on the ladder. Only 2 points separate the two teams, so a win either way would mean a lot. Whoever wins, as I said, all but cements their spot in the 8. Whoever loses falls closer to the pack of teams chasing behind. The Pies have had the better of us in recent years. The last time we beat them was back in 2021. Our last meeting was a thrilling Anzac Day draw, so both sides will be wanting to better themselves from the last clash, and what a time to do so. Both teams have something to prove. Arguably more so us. We still haven't claimed that proper scalp this year. We are one of 2 teams not to beat a side currently in the top 8. The other side is North Melbourne, so that's a bit of an embarrassing statistic. This is our chance to beat a team. This game will tell us a lot about our club. It's a really interesting matchup, really interesting play styles that shouldn't be affected by poor weather. It is, touch wood, looking like a clear game based off the rain radar, but I understand that Melbourne weather is far less predictable than Adelaide weather. I'm heading out to this game though, so that is good news for me, but let's talk about the match itself. Let's try and predict a winner, and to do so, we need to talk about our opponents a bit. Well, the Pies may be below us on the ladder, but they are going into this game as red hot favourites, and you can't really argue with that. They're in form. They've won 2 of their last 3, including a 54-point comeback, the 3rd biggest of all time. It's funny to think they started the year 0-3 because now they have a chance to leapfrog us in the top 4, and a team that started hot as well in Essendon. Based on form and looking at the sides on paper, this Collingwood team should beat us. They've had players return from injury. Keep in mind, a few weeks ago they were decimated up forward, still are a little bit. They lost something like 4 of their best 5 scorers, and in that time they were still averaging more points per game than us. This is a really dangerous team that thrives on the big stage. They thrive when their backs are against the wall, unlike Essendon, as we saw last week when we capitulated in that 3rd quarter with those umpiring decisions. They're everything we want to be, which hurts to say as an Essendon fan. You can't help but respect the Pies and what they've done in these last 2 or 3 years. Expect a packed out MCG full of Collingwood fans viewing a high pressure, high octane finals like game. You get the feeling there is room for another reality check, but I think no matter what, the Pies are going to come to play. They always do. Even after a slow start, they still have belief. Not many teams can come back from 54 points down to win a game of footy. Collingwood can. They play off pure belief, and you can feel it at the game. The fans are never quiet. Their club is never out of a match. So let's look at some of their strengths and then highlight ways we can potentially limit them. All the Pies, much like the Cats, have historically loved to play off half-back. It is how they want to flag, scoring heavily off the rebound, allowing teams to enter their 50, trusting their backline and cutting teams apart through forward handballs and gut running through the corridor. But in 2024, they've transformed their game a little bit. Last year, they were ranked 1st for scores from defence. This year, they're ranked 13th. But it's not a worry because they're actually averaging more shots per game than they were in 2023 when they won their grand final. That backline is defending higher up the field. Their forward line is doing really well to make the most of their chances, which I'll talk about in a bit. Their midfield has started to really click and generate clearances, whereas last year they were ranked below for that stat. It's a very different Collingwood team to how they looked in 2023 at their very best, but it's still a side we should really be worried about because they have that ace up their sleeve. They can still really kill teams from D50 even if they don't do it much anymore. They now have multiple ways to score, and you can't say the same for us. This Collingwood team can get the upper hand even if the game isn't being played the way they want, and that's dangerous. They don't have to rely on plan A. They can go through plan B and C. They have options aplenty, which is not ideal against a team who haven't clicked at all lately in Essendon. A big worry for me is that Collingwood are so strong at generating chances from their inside 50s. They are the 2nd best team in the competition at scoring from their inside 50s. They rarely dominate the count. They actually quite often lose it, but they are so good at finding space for their dangerous forwards and isolating defenders away from each other to create genuine one-on-ones. And on the flip side, Essendon are the 3rd worst ranked side team at exiting D50 when opposition enters. Only North and West Coast are ranked worse than us. This comes from the fact we usually dominate possession higher up the field, and we are pretty easy to score against on the counter when we have territory. Not even fully blaming the backline for that because we are really good at maintaining possession and creating turnovers in our forward half, but when it gets past our wall, it's very tough to defend. So as I talked about Collingwood and their rebounding nature before, that becomes a worry worry. They might be content to resort to their 2023 playstyle, allowing entries and carving us up on D50 like Geelong did last week, because that was brutal. I reckon this makes the midfield battle crucial. Last week I highlighted the defense and how whoever made the most out of their transition would win the game. This week I think it's all about who gets territory from the guts and who holds the footy in their forward 50 the most efficiently. The Pies will score regularly from their chances. They've done so all year. Last week they had almost 20 less inside 50s than Gold Coast, but only 5 less shots. You can dominate the Pies around the ground but still concede pretty heavily. So I think the focus needs to be on limiting the amount of entries they get going forward, and that starts from centre bounces and stoppages, getting territory from the midfield battle so they can't get those easy entries that they could score from. It's easier said than done. They average 37 clearances a game to our 36. We're missing Parrish. They just regained Jordan De Goey, but it isn't impossible. We've beaten some pretty good midfielders this year. I think if we win the clearance count and win it well enough to give us an extra 5 to 10 more inside 50s, we can at least use that as a little blueprint. If we're getting those 5 to 10 extra inside 50s, it is 5 to 10 that Collingwood aren't able to get themselves. And from here, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but from here we need to start making the most of our opportunities. There should be question marks over our forward setup and whether we can change something to get the most out of it, because right now we are a high inside 50 team, one of the very highest in the comp, but a very low scoring team. We have great contested markers and really clever forwards that create great leads. We just don't have that chemistry between forward line and midfield that can give us ways to score. It's really frustrating watching us play so well around the ground, control possession, only to fluff a chance going forward and concede on the rebound. We look great under the roof at Marvel. We look like a real threat at Marvel Stadium, but that's just the boys teasing the fan base, because as soon as we move to the G, it's dry up there. We have averaged 72 points from our last 3 MCG games. That is including the Dreamtime game against the Wooden Spoon contending Tigers. Collingwood have played 7 MCG games this year and have only dropped below 72 once against the Swans in round 1. If you want to win finals, you have to perform at the G, and so far this year we've only really done so against bottom teams, and even then we only barely beat Hawthorn and the Tigers. These are the games that we need to start scoring from if we want to be seen as a threat. We won't be playing at Marvel in September. We've got to start scoring at the G, and until we do, I will not be convinced that we are genuinely a team to be feared, because it should be noted we haven't beaten a team outside the bottom 4 since May 11 when we beat the Giants. That is 2 months of grinding out wins against poor teams. This is another game that I fear could be decided at selection. I'm going to talk about the team news in a bit, but I want to really highlight the importance of selection here and making the right calls. We are a very tall team, dual ruck setup, some 2-meter wingmen, a 3-pronged key forward attack with another 2-meter key defender, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realise that height in footy usually means a lack of leg speed on ground level, and Collingwood on the other hand they're a bloody quick team. They are full of small forwards. They almost have too many of them. The Pies are a smaller than usual team. They even go small in the ruck. It's all well and good to line up an extra tall under the roof at Marvel. We did it and it worked against the Eagles, but Marvel Stadium is completely different to the Dewey MCG. I can see it being a very long night if we line up similarly to how we did against Geelong. It could be worse, to be honest, because they have a very small forward line. They have a very small team. Do we consider taking out a key or bringing in some cover on ground level? Do we consider shortening our wings so we can at least limit the running impact of Josh Dacos and Steele Sidebottom? Collingwood have a real chance to outwork us if we don't reduce our height, and I'm sure that our advantage in the air wouldn't be that great anyway, considering Geelong had double the amount of contested marks as us last week. A lot for Scott here to think about. Let's look at some team news. It looks like everyone that wasn't already on the injury list is fit. Jones should be alright to go despite having that calf iced after he was subbed off. So it's all about the axe and whether it will swing. I don't think he will go too drastic, Brad Scott. I reckon 2 unforced changes at most, maybe 3. Menzies and Perkins will be under the pump. Cox was the sub, so he probably isn't far behind them. My gut feeling is Perkins keeps his spot. I reckon Menzies comes out for Jake Kelly, who was ill last game. I get the feeling Cox could feel pressure considering Jones was the starting wingman and we went in a bit too tall. So maybe Dylan Shield comes in for him. Shield was great in the VFL, so too Sartas. Check out the VFL results and performances in my video that I'll release tomorrow. As for Collingwood, a few worries. Bo McCreary and John Noble will miss through injury. The obvious choice for that is bringing the ill Lockie Schultz back into the team and maybe Finn McRae, who was good in the VFL. There are a couple of tests as well. Josh Dacos and Braden Maynard sustained big corkies, so don't be surprised if you see them miss the match after a 6-day turnaround. Alrighty, who's going to win and by how much? Prediction time. I'd say it's a tough game to pick, but I'm quite confident in Collingwood beating us. Even if we had put up a serious fight against Geelong, or even if we got the win, I would probably still back in the Pies, who are just based on game style, history, everything really favoured in this type of contest. Looking at this game, I can see 3, possibly possible results. We win a close one, Collingwood win a close one, or they completely belt us off the park. I don't think a single Essendon fan would predict us to win comfortably on Friday night, but plenty are worried about the potential of a repeat of our last Friday night against the Pies when they killed us by over 10 goals. I don't think it'll be that bad. I think we're a much improved side on last year, but I also think the Pies are just a much better team than us right now. I'd love to be proven wrong. I think a win here would be just about as big a win as we've had in years, if not decades, but I can't predict us to get the job done based off what I've seen this year. We need a statement. I'd love a statement win, but I'm going to predict the Pies to get the job done by 20 points. Leave your predictions down below. That is that. Huge game, huge opportunity for the club. Could make a real statement here, or on the flip side, we could prove the haters right and fall closer down where we arguably belong on the ladder. See you out at the game on Friday night. Hopefully it's packed. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.